We have a quorum, even though tonight we're not actually doing any quote-unquote official action. Tonight's more of an introductory type thing and kind of going through some high-level stuff with you. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you all so much for volunteering for this, and we really appreciate you working with us, and we're going to be talking tonight about a lot of different things and kind of sharing with you kind of the journey that we've been on the past year and a couple of months and kind of where we're at with some needs in the city. And but I just really want to sincerely, truly thank you all, each and every one of you, for doing this with us, because it's your voice that is so important. And as we go through this process, essentially what we're going to be asking you to do is to evaluate, kind of be a reality check for us on where we're at with things, and then make a recommendation back to City Council. And I'll walk through that in just a second. We are recording this. This is we are on the air, just so everybody's aware. So if you don't mind, why don't we just kind of start with some introductions? And I started talking without even introducing myself. So my name is Doug Finch, and I'm the city manager. And if you don't mind, we'll go around the table.
I'm Barry Gordon.
Kim Malone.
Michael Kowalik.
Linda Young.
Greg Zilka.
Erica Browning.
Patrick Hockey.
Well, that was fast. So thank you. Bart, well, let's go around and introduce staff as well. So
Bart Stevenson, I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation.
I'm Matt Bryant. I'm the Director of Public Works.
Chris Canelli, I'm the fire chief.
Greg Chase, Assistant Fire Chief.
Ron Wilcox, Assistant Chief Police.
Adrian Tiarino, Assistant Chief Police.
Matt Stogner, the police chief.
Clayton Hampshire, Director of IT.
Good evening, Richard Jackson, CFO, Fiscal Services.
don't worry, we're not going to quiz you on that. So nice too. So I'm going to stand up just because I'm going to be pointing at the board here as we go throughout the evening. And just kind of talking through some different stuff with you. What you have in front of you is you do have a handout that are all of the slides that I'm going to be going through tonight. I wanted to provide you a spot so you could take some notes as we went, or if you have questions. This is very much designed to be a free-flowing dialogue, so if you have questions as we go, just ask on the spot. You don't need to wait for a particular time frame. So the idea tonight is we'll do the introductions, which we just did. I'll talk to you about kind of how we got here, the charge of this committee, the process and the timeline we'll be walking through, the committee makeup. I do want to plant the seed with you to think about the election of a chair and a vice chair. We don't need to do that tonight, but the chair and a vice chair of this committee. We want to walk through our capital improvement plan, kind of where we're at with things, talk about some preliminary financial analysis. I want to share with you some of the planning documents that we've been working on this past year, and then kind of before we wrap up, talk about future meeting dates and those types of things. So any questions before we jump in? Ready? All right, let's go. So how we got here. So we got here, actually, the city council passed a resolution. And the resolution basically established a bond committee with a couple of very specific parameters in it. And I'm going to put this on the screen in here in a second. But there's a 9-member committee. It's each of the council members appointed one person. There's a member of the DCEDC and then a member of the P&Z. The city manager and or his designee shall serve in a non-voting liaison capacity to the committee. 9 of you are the voting members of this committee. So the purpose and charge of the committee, the purpose, I'm just going to read it though. The Duncanville Citizen Bond Advisory Committee is to engage community members in a transparent, collaborative process that prioritizes infrastructure investments and guides the city's decision-making regarding the 25 bond election. The charge of the committee will include the following. I'll go into these in a little bit more detail in a second, but should the city council call for a bond election? Should a portion of the bond capacity be dedicated to infrastructure facilities, health and safety? If so, how much? Consider the amount of bonding capacity available and the potential impact of the city tax rate. Consider the recommendations of the comprehensive plan and other planning documents. And then what other needs should we consider? When we talk about planning documents, I'm going to reference some of this throughout the evening. And I pulled some of mine just to put them up here to be able to share with you some of the work that we've done this past year. We just recently completed a dog park master plan that's been adopted by council. As of last night, we adopted the Charles Ladd Nature Preserve Master Plan. We just recently completed, a couple of months ago, a complete facility needs assessment of all of our buildings, all of our properties. The police and fire chief would shoot me if I didn't mention this, but we just recently completed analysis of both the police department and the fire department of their staffing needs as well as the facility needs. So we have that. All of these are different firms that we've worked with. We have a parks master plan. We are planning to do an update of that in the coming year. So we talk about some of the parks items. We have the work of the 2018 bond committee. And then we have any series of, to have a regional transportation plan, but we're talking about updating that. We're talking about doing a drainage master plan, a water master plan, and I'm sure I'm missing something. So, yes, sir.
And so as we go through our process, will those documents be available to us?
Yes.
So that we can be positioned to make informed decisions?
100%. What I'd like to do is, number one, for each of you, create a binder, and we just don't have them available tonight, but I'll create a binder that has a lot of that information. We also want to post a lot of those documents on a special page on the website, so you can flip through them and search and just make it a little easier, I think, for you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Finch, as far as board members, who's also on the board and who's missing tonight?
Sure.
I don't know if you can cover that.
Let me,
If it's down the road.
it is down, you know what, let me go back, let me come back to it, because it is, I'm going to introduce that to you here in a second. All right, under the purpose and charge of the bond committee, I want to just touch on specifically each of these 5 items. There's a little bit more to it that was included with that. The committee will evaluate the necessity of a bond election in light of the city's current and future needs, recommend to the city council whether it's appropriate to place a bond measure on the ballot for consideration by the public. So this would be talking about the November ballot. Number 2, the committee will, and this is the second question, the committee will assess the city's infrastructure and facility needs, including areas that affect health and safety. Based on these assessments, the committee will determine what portion of the bond capacity should be allocated to critical areas and propose an appropriate funding level. The third one, the committee will analyze the available bonding capacity, the cost of proposed projects, the potential impact to the city's tax rate. They'll provide recommendations to the city council on whether the overall tax rate should be reduced, maintained, increased to fund proposed bond initiatives. Fourth, the committee will take into account the Duncanville Comprehensive Plan. Actually, I can't believe I forgot to mention that one. But so we've just launched earlier in 24, a whole new comprehensive plan. They're working through that right now. It's not yet finalized, but we have enough information that we can start to pull from that as we work through that. And we do have the key vision of the comprehensive plan that we'll be sharing with you, as well as other planning documents to ensure that proposed capital projects align with the city's long-term vision and priorities for growth, sustainability, and quality of life. Other needs, the committee will evaluate any additional needs or priorities that should be considered for funding through the bond election, ensuring no critical infrastructure community service needs are overlooked. So that could be if we don't talk about something, but something comes up, or you have an idea, let's put it on the table, let's put it in the parking lot, let's discuss it, whether or not we make a recommendation for that.
Mr. Finch?
Yes, sir.
Is it, going back to number 1, is it fair for us to deduce at this time that we're here because number 1's already been decided or at least determined by the council and staff that a bond is necessary because of those needs of infrastructure, facilities, health and safety? Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. I don't believe.
Sure. So we're going to work through that. We want to talk about that, right? I think that essentially that is one of the questions that the council is looking to confirm. Based on once we get into some of this detail and some of these analysis, do you believe, do you agree that there is a need for a bond election? Because the council has not made a decision. And there was even some dialogue back and forth, but what they did agree to was the creation of the bond committee to explore these and to help make a recommendation whether or not this should be done.
Okay.
Good question. Anything else? In addition to the planning documents, there's a couple of other items that were specifically called out, and I'll walk through those here with you in a few moments. But the police facility, potential of a third fire station. I'll talk more about that tonight, as well as both the chiefs are here, as well as the expansion and renovation of the service center. The process and timeline of this group, the committee. The committee will meet regularly. It's up to us to define what that is. To review community feedback, evaluate potential projects, develop recommendations for the city council. The process would include public meetings, forums, gather input from residents, consideration of both short-term and long-term projects that align with the comprehensive plan and other city documents, review of the financial implications of the proposed bonds, including potential impacts to the city's tax rate, and specifically the timing. The committee is charged with reporting its findings to the council by July of 25. So this is not meant to be a long, drawn-out committee. This is a pretty condensed timeline. So we have, 90 days roughly to think about this and work through this, but 90 to 120 days. And part of the reason is this. I want to share this with you. So the council established the bond committee. I believe it was their second meeting in January. May have even been February. So we're talking about, this says June, but it's really July to make the bond committee do the recommendation. But the key date is this, August 18th. If the committee is recommending that we go to the voters requesting a bond, the last day for us to file in order to put it on the ballot is August 18th. So that means the city council prior to August 18th has to vote yes to put ballot proposition on the ballot. That's why that July date is there, and it's July.
Do we know what the date of that last city council meeting before the 18th is?
So it would be the second meeting in July, technically. I don't know. Can somebody look that up for me? And see what that is. I don't know what that is. We have a little bit of flexibility. If we had to move to the first meeting in August, we probably could, but our charge is to try to get it by July 15th. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is there any connection between August 18, 2025 and state law?
That
As
is the
relates
state
to
law.
setting the tax rate?
Not relative to the tax rate, to the best of my knowledge. The August 18th is specifically spelled out in the state law for this year for the last day to file to put an order or a ballot proposition on the ballot. So I don't know if there's a specific coincidence, but it is, there's a number of days before the general election. They work backwards from general election, 90 some odd days or whatever it is, so business days. So
And they work backwards
from the general election date.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
If a ballot proposition goes on and if it gets passed, what we would be looking to do is jumpstart these processes and these projects as quickly as possible. So we'd be looking at basically construction on some of these items through the year 26, with hopefully in 2027, early 2027, starting to open and have some of these new facilities available to the public. One of the things that happened, I'm going to go into some of the detail, but one of the things that happened the last time the city did a bond was in 2018, and some of those projects drug on a lot longer than anybody would have liked. There's COVID, there's any number of factors that impacted that, but to show to everybody that we can get these done and get these done efficiently. Because the longer they drag on, the more money it actually ends up costing. So any questions about that? Committee composition, touched on this. One individual nominated by each of the city council members. That's 7 plus P&Z plus the DC EDC. So that's the 9-member group. So here's our 9-member group. Mr. Harvey, appointed by the mayor. You guys are almost sitting in order of this. Ms. Browning appointed by Councilmember Gooden. Mr. Zilka appointed by Councilmember Veracruz. Kim appointed by Councilmember Mac Burnett. Linda appointed by Councilmember Kuntz. Former Mayor Barry Gordon appointed by Councilmember Karen Sherry Brown. Michael appointed by Councilmember Pennebaker. Michael, can you say your last name for me?
Kowalik.
Kowalik, thank you. Mr. Goff, who's representing the DC EDC, is not able to be here this evening, and then I believe Yolanda representing PNC. So. Want to jump in and kind of give you let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever you want to call it. I always say if you can't fix it, might as well feature it. So as I mentioned, the city of Duncanville did a bond project in 2018, and well, we could have done better. So I want to walk through some of those items, but I also want to give you an honest update so you understand, and we've got staff in the room here tonight, where those projects are. So there were 4 propositions that went on the ballot. Proposition A was relative to parks and trails. Proposition B was about public works and street improvements. Proposition C was the construction of a new fire station, and Proposition D was the service center. Has anybody been to the service center? I'm just curious. Many members, a few of you have. Okay. So what I want to do is walk through each of these and kind of share with you kind of what has happened. Before I do that though, just so everybody's aware, in 2018, when the bond was taken out, it was a 20-year bond at 3.1% interest. The council authorization date there you see was February 5th, 2019. The annual debt service payment was just about $1.5 million. And that equated to, you can see it's a descending because as the taxable value goes up, the rate goes down. So you can see our total debt service here on this chart is just about 4 cents. Okay, I'm going to go through these projects with you, and I kind of want to take them one at a time. And I know that some of this is hard to see. What I'm going to do is just kind of advance this next screen, and I put a couple of things here. Bart, since we're talking about parks here, please feel free to jump in. Rotary Park parking lot. The original bond allocation was $50,000, and that is complete now from the 2018 bond project. There's nothing else to do with that, right? Lakeside Park Pavilion, the original bond allocation was $400,000, and that one is also complete. What's to do there? Armstrong Park Splash Pad. The original bond allocation for that was $2.25 million. The total project ended up being $3.167 million. So there was an overage on that project, but that project is completed. There's nothing else left to do with that. What the city did, and you'll see this as we go along through a series of these, they ended up using other sources of revenue to make up the difference where there was a shortfall in the 2018 bond. A lot of it was ARPA money. That was one-time COVID money that came from the federal government that the city then used to help bridge the gap. Number 9 here, Harrington Park, including pavilion, Waterview Bridge, and trails. So the original budget was $2.9 million. I know it's hard to read from back there, but currently we're at $6,537,560, including all that. But you want to give an update kind of on where we're at with that now?
Sure. Phases 1 and 3 are currently in progress. The concession stand restroom building for the DPPI is no longer there. I don't know if you've been there recently, but the slab is gone, everything's gone. So we are working toward getting those facilities back up and running here in the next probably 6 to 7 months. Phase 3 is the trail and bridge to Waterview Park. We're currently working through some design concerns with that project just because it is in the floodplain. So we're working with our engineering department as well as the engineering folks for our consultant to make sure that we are not going to cause any flooding once that's put in. If there is some concerns, we'll have to raise the bridge. So we're working through that. But phase 2, we were not able to fund right now, and that is the parking lot. So that is still outstanding to be done.
Okay, so given the amount of overage on the Harrington Park project, is there sufficient funds remaining in that proposition to finish that particular project? Or is there an alternative that's being considered that we as a committee might need to consider?
The council did move the trail funding, the remaining trail funds from the bond election to this project. It's specifically for the trail and the bridge. Those are trail projects. We feel the trail and the bridge will be a vital link from the neighborhood that surrounds Harrington Park to the school. It's Brandenburg. So it will allow all those kids to walk or ride their bikes to school without having to get in a car and go down Cockrell Hill to Wintergreen up to near Brandenburg School. So it's a long drive. So we think it's gonna be a great addition to our trail system.
So if I could, so with the budget adjustment that council did just earlier this year, with a couple of different uses of other funding options, we did a budget adjustment and funded phase 1 and 3, but there is no funding currently available for phase 2. Can you remind me phase 2 what that is again?
That's a couple $1 million. Yeah.
That's the parking and those things.
So then, if I'm understanding this correctly, there's been a change in project scope, which primarily includes the parking.
It was reduced to not include the parking, correct?
Okay. Is that still a need?
Very much so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was like, what Mr. Harvey brought up, was thinking that it's probably gonna fall to our responsibility to look at those needs and then to say, should that phase then be included in what we look at for 2025 if the need is still there? So that it's a carryover from what we didn't get accomplished for the 2015 project. Should we as a committee say it's still of such importance that we now consider for 2025? And it's gonna be competing for priorities, competing for money too. I mean, the increase, the incremental increase from that, from 1 to 2 or 3 is really, it could be a huge part of what we're looking at for 2025. So I think we're gonna have to look at the priorities and say, is it still such a necessity? Mr. Stevens says you're gonna have to pound sand, to convince us that those dollars for 2018 that didn't get accounted for this for 2025, is it gonna compete well enough for us as a committee to put it on 2025?
And
So
that was,
what you're bringing up, Mr. Harv, is a great question. Do we carry it or does it die?
Well said. Any other questions on that? Did everybody follow that?
So if I'm understanding, we're talking about maybe some of those projects from the 2018 would not go forward. So the people that voted for those projects thought they were important enough, and it's up to us to decide, no, they were wrong. They're not important in light of the new projects that we have before us.
I don't know if wrong is the right word. It was evaluating the entire city's priorities. Did it fall from a priority of 1A, 1B, or 1C to a 3 or something? And then what you can't accomplish.
time does bring about a change.
It does. And the overall expenses, and we'll get into some of the other things that have been identified with these more recent plans. That's not to say that a bond proposition couldn't look something similar to what was done in 2018 too, and maybe there's a separate question for parks improvements, for instance, and maybe that one's in there as well as others. I don't know. Obviously, we're just starting.
But just to piggyback on what Ms. Browning said, those are conversations that we're gonna have. We hadn't made any decisions
Right.
tonight, so.
Yeah, correct. Correct. Everybody on board? Everybody follow? Okay, good. The last one was the trails under this, specifically citywide trails. That was $1 million. Jennifer had this listed as 900,000 available, but I think that was part of what we moved over, wasn't it?
Yes. We moved the vast majority of that over to the Harrington project,
To the phase,
phase 3.
1 and 3 specifically. The bridge, maybe just a high level overview. And that is a bridge that goes over a creek that connects some neighborhoods, and there's a
Right,
series of.
and there's two issues in addition to making sure that it's out of the floodplain or not causing it flooding once it goes in. There's also some possible changes from the TRA that's looking to move their line that we're working through that as well. So I know Shahad has been very involved with that. She can probably provide more than I can on that, because I know she's been in direct contact with the consultants. But we feel confident that we can make this project work.
What is
one way or the other.
TRA?
The Trinity River Authority.
Yeah, Trinity River.
So there's
Our
sanitary sewer line.
treatment
There's a-
providers.
In case somebody.
There's an aerial line that goes across 10 Mile, very close to that area. And when we first originated this project, they told us, oh, that's never going to move, you're good to go. But since that time, they've rethought that, and they're doing a realignment study, I believe.
Yeah, and just to add on, we have, there's another study that's happening by Dallas County, and it's also the inland port that Dallas County have reported here in council several times a progress on, which is also looking at the floodplain in the area in general. So we are trying to use some of this data to also basically coordinate with the engineer that is designing this project to be able to overlap those efforts and make sure we're not really, we're making use of that data that Dallas County has invested some money in really evaluating this floodplain issue and basically trying to use some of those survey data to determine whether the addition of this bridge will really cause a rise that might, cause a flood that we need to ultimately change the design based upon by raising that bridge, or we're good to go, then we don't need to do anything, just proceed with the design as is.
Drainage is a topic that has been coming up more and more, that I've even seen over the last 3 to 6 months. The city is 11.5 square miles, and in those 11.5 square miles, we have 21 miles of tributaries. The creek that they're talking about is 10 Mile Creek. Dallas County did that inland port studying 10 Mile Creek, but there's any number of other creeks and tributaries that feed into that, and we've been hearing more and more from residents about erosion as well as a number of issues relative to that. I know that we're talking about doing a drainage master plan to really evaluate all of those tributaries throughout the city, but that one in particular, we do have at least some baseline data on 10 Mile Creek now. Mr. Zolkis.
Question for Bert. Is the water line still active from the lake to the fields?
Yes.
Is that,
Yes.
would that be in conflict of the bridge
It will not.
or
Yeah, it
this
will not.
this creek project?
No, that won't be an issue at all. What he's asking about, that we currently irrigate all of Harrington Park with water from Waterview Park. So we have a line that runs from Waterview over to Harrington. Will not be a conflict.
Okay.
Good question.
Moving on to Proposition B, that was really the Public Works projects, South Cedar Ridge Drive, Daniel Dale Road, and Main Street. So, and I'm gonna let you two jump in here and help with this, but Daniel Dale Road reconstruction. The bond allocation was $3.1 million. The total project ended up being $7,794,797. So it was almost double what the bond allocation was for the project. But the good news is, it's complete, it's done, check,
Check.
it's there. Now, that said, right, we've been having conversations, some residents have been speaking up more and more about bike lanes, about any number of things. We've been hearing some of that relative even to Daniel Dale and the road reconstruction, but share with you, that's all I really have to share with you. No decisions have been made relative to that whatsoever. Although the council has recently adopted a complete streets policy. Do you want to touch on that, Sean? So what that policy is, just so everybody's aware.
Yeah, so the complete street policy is basically a policy that puts us in the right direction, just kind of positioning us to where we have the ability, once a project goes into time for rehabilitation, major rehabilitation, reconstruction, then we are going to look at different elements of that project and to find whether it fits or to potentially become a complete street. So if those elements are available, then we are going to consider this street or reconstruction as a complete street. And what is a complete street? Is a street that provides access to all. So basically, different mobility, not only riders, but it's going to be also bikers, walkers, ADA, visually impaired. It has to be a complete street with the complete elements that provide access for all and ability to connectivity also with other elements of transportation around, given provide some connectivity with other cities that have similar paths like bike lanes and things like that. So that's really the idea of the complete street policy.
It just sounds like to me, given the what's the word I'm looking for, the expectations concerning surrounding a complete street. Somehow in the back of my mind, I'm wondering if there is some type of financing from somewhere available to transform the street into a complete street, since it sounds so much desirable over and above one's regular street.
Yeah, so are you mentioning, are there funding opportunities outside of what the city would fund? Yeah, so there are opportunities out there that we are seeking, and there has been industry support in general and federal government support towards complete street walkability, alternative transportation solutions, and we're seeking that through different grant applications. We have already submitted 2 grant applications with TxDOT for what's called alternative transportation alternative program, and with that we're trying to achieve more walkability, ADA compliance on different streets that we see a problem with, and we're also looping in safe routes to schools. So we're providing connectivity to schools as well in one of those project scopes that we submitted. So we are working on that. These projects are there, but there are no guarantee of selection of these projects. There is a competition on these projects with all of the cities in the region, so there is always a chance to get awarded versus not.
And the primary grantor of these grants is the state government or the federal government?
Both. It's both. There's opportunities.
There are opportunities with both, yeah. Like TxDOT is the TxDOT alternative, but then there are other opportunities with COG that we're working on, and then those are the main 2 that we're seeking, and with the Texas Water Development Board too.
There's federal programs. Safe Routes to School is really a federal program. A lot of times the money gets passed down to the state, and the state hands it out type thing through the COG. So we're working with Michael Morris, the Director of Transportation at COG. I know recently Shad and I both had conversations with the Dallas Mobility Coalition, and so really plugging into those other opportunities. But some of you are aware, some of you have held a variety of different positions with the city. So many things that we do are interrelated, interconnected, and one of the challenges the city has had the last couple of years is it's pretty much an automatic disqualification for any number of these grants if you're not up to date on your audits. And so our finance team has just done an amazing job this year completing 5 audits. The 24 audit is just coming the next council meeting, right? So it'll be on time before March 30th. I think there's an audit committee this week, right? Tomorrow. And so they've done a phenomenal job so that we're not automatically disqualified from a lot of those funding opportunities now. So we're all up to date on those audits. So.
And that's why, I'm sorry, Barry, go ahead.
My question goes back to that. So
Okay.
go
ahead.
My understanding of a complete street, going back, we didn't invent it. The city did not invent a complete street. It's federal. So understanding that and what was just explained, if I recall correctly, to do a complete street, you can't do it piecemeal. With all those elements that she just iterated, they all have to be there in order to be a complete street. You can't cherry pick. Well, let's do ADA, let's do this, and let's do this, and leave pieces out. So that complete street is so complete that it can't be messed with. So
For whichever
really,
segments,
your hand,
right.
if you decide to do a complete street, you're handcuffed. And that's something we need to understand.
But not every street in the city will be a complete
Right.
street, right?
That's why
Some will
you
be neighborhood
decide where
streets, some
you're
will be
gonna do that.
collectors, right? Exactly.
Yeah, because I was thinking to myself, I'm not gonna live to see that.
No.
I'm just saying.
No. Did you have another question?
No, I was just gonna say, just, and this is really kind of off topic, so y'all just kind of, let me apologize in advance, but I was gonna tell Richard I was gonna take time out of my busy schedule to come tomorrow to the Finance Committee meeting and just profusely praise you all for the wonderful work that you've done,
Thank you, sir.
that some of us pushed so hard to happen.
Yes. Thank you.
The finance team has done an incredible job, even, it is a little off topic, but I like to talk about the finance team too. They're amazing. They've done 3 years worth of bank reconciliations, and God knows they're doing a phenomenal job. They're hitting home runs every single day, so anyway. The Daniel Dale Road, we talked about that. The next one is Cedar Ridge. The original 2018 bond allocation was $2 million. To date, project actuals are about $402,000. I think the updated budget is about $5.3 million, 5.272. So we've got total remaining balance, $4,897,000. But Shahan, do you want to give an update and maybe talk about the overlay separate from the project?
Okay.
Work from last time.
Okay, yeah. So, so this project is currently in 100% design, at 100% design. So we have completed the design. We're in the 100% design review before we can, and we're also putting together the bid package to put it out for bid soon for construction. Well, the section that we're talking about here is Middale to Camp Wisdom, and yes, and then. And actually, that section was recently, during the end of the last fiscal year, was basically not necessarily resurfaced, but had a microsurfacing that work that was done. So a lot of questions were about, okay, whether we're just rehabilitated something and now we're just tearing it up and we're redoing it. It's not necessarily that. Just to clarify, that was a preventative maintenance that was just done there, and it's really not the suitable treatment because the subbase was still failing. So this project still needs a reconstruction, and whatever had happened there, it's going to give it an additional 3 years life maximum. Looking good, riding smoother, but not necessarily creating a long-term solution. So this is what we're trying to do here, is the long-term solution that is still needed. And with that project, we were able to find the additional budget through reallocating some funds from the water utilities and drainage. And together, we were able to find the updated estimates, which was also more than the double of what was originally allocated, the $2 million. Now it's plans at 6.7, I think, total $1 million, and that fund is available to complete the project, unless more, the estimates or goes higher. But we are forecasting to meet that.
I like to say, so the microsurfacing, basically, for those of you who drive up and down that road, so it went from the post office up to the high school, essentially.
Yeah.
And then this project essentially goes from the high school right up to the city line.
Yes.
The northern.
Yeah, and where we have submitted a grant application, we're working on a grant application to continue to do the whole stretch of the Cedar Ridge as well, but that's just, and consider this as the 20% match for the city. That's what our goal, but with the COG, but that is still in the working, and we would not award it.
The current composition of the street that we're talking about runs alongside Duncanville High School. Is it currently, what is its current material composition? It's asphalt, right?
Yes.
It's asphalt, yes, and this microsurfacing was top coat.
It's a slurry.
A slurry seal, they call it. It's a light slurry basically, and in fact, so it's just a top coat that usually used for preventative maintenance. It does get applied on good condition streets or that are usually A condition, high Bs, which is basically a good looking street, very healthy to just continue to be healthy, extend its life early when it's still healthy, not necessarily when it's failing to where we need to have a reconstruction. So we actually have, I want to just also bring up the street assessments, the pavement assessments that we have. So we just have completed a city pavement assessment, and this updated data, we just got the reports for that updated data, where we got new condition data for all of the street pavements to include city pavements to include streets, alleys, sidewalks, and also some updated signs and traffic inventories. And based on that, definitely there will be an updated needs for streets in specific that we're definitely probably going to bring up and talk about at some point, where you'll be able to see how much reconstruction is needed versus our options for regular maintenance and continuing to apply the other preventative maintenance for good streets.
I want to share with the group, just so you kind of know what we've been working through this past year. I listened to Shahad talk about streets, and I hear the passion that comes from Shahad and talking about streets. We are so fortunate. I'll share with you, and the HR department just ran this number for me. Since January of 2024, we have 98 people that have been hired or promoted into new positions. 42% of the city's workforce has changed over since January of 24. That can be good. It can also be a challenge. But what I will share with you is every single person in this room, with the exception of Bart here, is within their position now, is in a position that they weren't in January of 24. And we are bringing in rock stars from everywhere, people that are really excited about working with us and making Duncanville much better than they have. So we're really excited about that. So.
Can I ask one last question?
Sure.
So Shah, how often does the city does a street assessment analysis?
The last one was done pretty long ago. So it's typically the city has been doing it more than 5 years apart. And what's recommended to basically be able to show a trend for how the city is progressing in terms of applying any maintenance and seeing their result on the city network. Usually it's recommended to be like 2 years apart, but the last time we have done
I feel
it
like it was
2017.
2017. I think 17 or 14. It was a while ago.
Which is more than I guess 7 years ago.
And that street condition analysis said that the overall condition of the streets at that time was like 71 or something like that.
Yeah, and I have touched in a previous meeting about that. Well, the recent results show almost similar thing. Well, the data that was presented previously had a one condition index for all of the city pavements, meaning alleys and streets, and they are not the same thing. So basically, this is really skewed up kind of the results. And also, when you looking at the streets only, you will see it's still in the 70. The other reason I would not look at this results and see, wow, our streets are great condition, is because that 70, we have been doing a lot of overlays, not necessarily doing milling, overlaying. So those just coming in overlaying we've been just coming and overlaying a lot of our asphalt streets, creating top layers. Usually when you do that, even with the Cedar Ridge, for example, that treatment we have done, that changes the reading, because those radars, when they scan those streets, they will look at the topical cracks. So when there is that layer, even if it's thin, and the underneath, subbase is just failed, it's gonna read the top layer and it's gonna tell you it's a good condition. So it's not necessarily really representative of the actual case over there. So we're trying to get away from that and start looking at more, just analyzing the streets based on the history we have, based on inspections, and also based on looking at what treatments have happened in the past, moving forward in order to prioritize what we need to do moving forward. Yeah.
Yes, great.
Question on the designs. Do you guys look at just the street, or do you also look at the underground franchise utilities and infrastructure that causes problems, particularly at the creeks where you get undermining from time to
Yeah,
time?
so the creeks, we definitely take that into consideration. Anytime we've got water or sewer infrastructure in the way, we want to do some erosion control to protect those. Cedar Ridge specifically, that includes new water, new sewer. We've communicated with all the franchise utilities out there to give them the opportunity to upgrade, move, whatever's necessary. One big, not really big delay, but one of the delays we experienced with Cedar Ridge is our existing water line actually is in Dallas city limits, and that creates complications. So the new design keeps our water system 100% in our city limits, but we have to work and coordinate with Dallas for that decommissioning of that line. So that was all in the design.
My other question was, in the original bond, that was supposed to be where the water break was in front of the post office in that zone.
Yeah.
So what's the plans for that area?
Kind of alluding back to what she was talking about, we're applying for grants. So what we'd like to do is not exactly what we're planning in that segment of Cedar Ridge, but essentially a reconstruction and applying for grants to keep that reconstruction moving down Cedar Ridge.
Great questions. The last one from the 2018 bond project was Main Street. $1.5 million was allocated. It's commonly referred to as the Camp Wisdom, Main Street Railroad crossing, and all of that. I don't know which, shall I go ahead? So,
Yeah.
I'm not touching that one.
So on this one, this project originally was considered to be like just a regular reconstruction of, just renew the pavement and the subsurface utilities. But looking at the case of this project in specific, that intersection needed a geometry analysis and redesign due to the grading of the railroad. And that issue of the grade over there that you can feel already when you're driving is something that needs to be addressed alongside the reconstruction or the time of the reconstruction. Otherwise, when we reconstruct it as is, just to change up, upgrade the pavements, leaving the problem as is, we didn't really solve, ultimately the problem, and then we might need to still address that at some point, and we don't want to just do that and then have to redo the work again. So that's why part of it is that, and then the other part of it is actually similar to the rest of the projects. The cost estimates go in much higher, so currently it lands at over $7 million with our latest estimate to do that and fix the grading. So, and we don't have those funds to do that yet. We're also seeking alternative funds through the grant opportunity. So we have submitted that for COG as well to seek grants to address that project alongside the Cedar Ridge. And we will need to provide 20% match or the design cost if we get selected, and we're hoping that if we get selected, this $1.5 million can leverage into that. But again, that deadline or the selection haven't happened yet.
Questions on that? Okay, so that completes the items that were in for Public Works in terms of streets. In the 2018 bond allocation, again, Daniel Dale Road is done. Cedar Ridge, we have plans to move that forward, at least a portion of it, but we're exploring grant options for doing more along Cedar Ridge. And then obviously that Main Street intersection, there's still some alternative sources of revenue that we need to find to get that across the finish line. Fire station, Proposition C, The original allocation amount was $6 million for the project. The project ended up being 10 million, I'm sorry, it would have been nice if it was 10,000. $10,977,999. Chief is here, and Assistant Chief Chase, I know, Chase, you poured your heart and soul and sweat and tears and blood and everything else into that project to get it across the finish line, and we certainly had some hiccups there I know that I even saw at the 11th hour, but the good news is it's open. So.
And we were worth it. I think, I don't know where the 6 million came from in the beginning, I don't recall that. I do know during the process, with the city staff, the project managers, people overseeing certain areas of it, whether it be IT and all of that. When we opened the door, I think there were about 8 or 10 of them, and when we opened the doors last year, I am the only one left out of that group. They all turned over. We ran into project manager issues to decision-making, which during the construction of these projects, if you don't get this on the timeline, you may end up getting delayed. But prior to that, a little bit of delays in the planning part of it and getting decisions made there. We were also in the middle of COVID, which raised the price of everything, and that delay and the snowstorm and whatnot, and that dealt with supply chain issues and that excuse that they used quite a bit. Also finding workers after COVID ran us into time delays, which the time was a big factor in the cost overrun. So last I heard it was 8 million. So, but if we're at 10, hey,
that was the final number from finance. 10.9. So it was over, or 10.4. I'm sorry. It's hard to see with that red. I have to keep squinting. I put my glasses on to see that. But the good news is it's done. We certainly have changed some processes. I'll also share with you internal controls as a result of this project, making sure that change orders are getting approved by council, making sure that changes aren't just happening. We also, not just for this project, but for other projects, we actually have a project manager in-house, part of city administration now, that's helping to monitor every single one of our projects throughout the city. So, any questions on the new fire station 1? That's what I would call it. So, the last one here from the 2018 bond projects is Proposition D, and that is the service center. They called it service center renovation. The bond allocation was $2.4 million. Not sure exactly what to say, Matt. So. 2.4 million is essentially nowhere near enough. So
it might buy a roof.
Yeah.
So the service center, which houses everything Public Works, is long past its operational abilities. So the 2.4, which was originally proposed, again, much like you've heard a dozen times, COVID ran everything through the roof. I mean, especially with the Cedar Ridge project. So we've seen construction projects go from $250 per linear foot of pipeline. Now we're at $400 a linear feet of pipeline. So construction across the board is double what it was just 5 or 6 years ago. We actually haven't had power in the last 15-ish hours, so just got an update that hopefully we should have power tonight. Outside of that, any question? Yes, sir.
How old is that building?
How old?
Yeah.
At least as old as me. I think it was built in 85-ish.
one of the challenges I'll tell you is I've walked through the building. There are parts where I can be inside the building and see outside without looking through a window. I've seen rats in the building and droppings. It is not a nice place to work.
So I've noticed that they've been using the old fire station for certain things.
The Parks and Recreation.
Oh,
So the service center is intended to house Parks and Recreation's operations as well. Because we are so full and the building is just in such bad shape, they've relocated to the old fire station.
That's
How
temporary.
much of-
Temporary. That's temporary.
Well, how much of that space is being utilized by Parks and Recreation? All of it.
Yeah.
And is there a reason why it's temporary? I mean, is that not a permanent solution?
Well, I think from an efficiency standpoint, honestly, it would make more sense to have parks as well as code enforcement and all of the public works all together over at the service center because of the vehicles coming and going and being able to maintain them and service them, as well as sharing equipment and that type of thing. So I think long-term, it would probably be better to have them over at a new service center. I think there's also a lot of interest from an economic development perspective in doing something different with that fire station building to provide more of an opportunity for the community.
Mr. Finch, I think that was just for a refresh, that's why that number was where it was at. It wasn't to replace it, it was just to kind of bring it up to date, because it needed a lot.
And I'll share with you here in a few minutes as we talk about some of the capital improvement planning we've been doing, but we have some numbers that are 4 or 5 times that number to do what we think needs to be done. So other questions on that? With each of these, and as we go through this process, one thing we do want to offer too is if anybody would like to see any of these facilities, we'll set up tours. We can set up a time when we could meet over there. The service center, we appreciate that the staff still shows up for work, so. All right, let me talk to you a little bit about some of the work we've been doing since October. So it was actually the day before, I think, Halloween, we had a meeting with council, and we really wanted to start to lay out a 15-year capital improvement plan for the city. And this isn't to talk about fleet replacement or street really maintenance, street reconstruction, yes, maintenance, no, it's not talking about staffing, it's not talking, but it is talking about building streets, newer reconstruction, parks, facilities, technology, the things that we need. So what we asked the council to do, as well as the residents that participated, as well as the staff, is we started putting, and again, it was the day before Halloween at the time, so we used 3 buckets. We asked people to put in items in a short-term bucket, 25 to 27, when they would like to see things done. A medium term or an intermediate bucket, 2028 to 2032, and a long-term bucket, we'll do it somewhere between 2033 and 2040. And so that very first meeting, we asked the question, just as an example, when should we plan to construct either a new or updated service center? And clearly the service center fell in that short-term bucket. What I'd like to do with you is kind of go through some of our facilities with you, and just kind of share high level. Stop me if you have questions, if you want to know more information, but I'll kind of give you a high level of kind of where we're at with some of the facilities, and I'll go rather quickly. But the field house, obviously, is a city facility. There's about $2.6 million in improvements needed at the facility. Obviously, that number could be a little bit more, a little bit less. Obviously, things like the mural, I know that they're currently working on some opportunities with the Arts Commission, and that may be a fraction of $50,000. It may be less than that. The HVAC system is currently in the process of being replaced. That is actually underway now, and that will be completed by, do you remember June, July? I don't have Angel here. Usually I look at Angel she's our project manager, but I believe it's right around June time period that whole HVAC system should be up and operational, the new HVAC. There's some flooring needs there, there's some kitchen upgrades, some carpet. But the good news is, the biggest thing, we asked the question, when should the HVAC be replaced? That's a whole new system. It's in progress. It showed up on the short-term list, and it's in progress now. We also asked about some of the other things, when the group thought that kitchen upgrades, cabinets, replacement, those types of things, when those should be done. And you can see that it didn't rank quite as high. I think one of the things I'll share with you in terms of the field house is we are currently contracted with a company called Hunden Partners. They're a professional sports management facility company, and they are doing an independent analysis for us currently of the field house and what the future of the field house could look like, as well as what the market is for something like the field house. And those results are due to us on April 27th. And once we have that information, we'll be able to make a little bit more informed decision there. Fire department overall, there's some things here, and Chief, jump in here. We've talked about, maybe actually share with the group specifically relative to Station 2, some of the improvements that that the crews have been asking for.
Thank you, Mr. Finch. Again, Chris Bailey. I came here in September is when I started with the city, so I'm very excited about being here. That said, Captain Langan has taken on upon himself and his crew, I don't know if the crew are hostages or what, but they are involved with this endeavor of trying to make cosmetic fixes to Station 2. Station 2 was built in 1995. It's on Main Street, 1530 Main Street, and the station's had numerous challenges. If you want to go into details, Chief Chase will speak to that, but they've had foundation issues and plumbing leaks, and those have been ongoing. They did foundation repairs, but even recently our water bills been significantly higher, so there's still leaks going on underneath the foundation. And Salon Creek, I don't know, I'm not a geo person to tell you exactly what all's going on with where we're located, but all that said, there's significant challenges, and the station was just wear and tear and what have you. So they have been removing items we don't need any longer, doing a deep clean of what have you. But to use a poor analogy, is try putting lipstick on a pig. And so it's trying to make it more livable. As you know, a fire station, the firefighters live in that building 24/7, 365. So it gets a lot of use, and so both our fire stations are very busy. And so all that said, what we've been doing is cosmetic, not real cost. We have a project manager for the city. She's going to be doing a tour of the station on March 17th. And as Mr. Finch can validate, there's a lot of passion amongst the firefighters. He held breakfast meetings with all 3 shifts, and beyond staffing of the department, certainly the conditions of Fire Station 2 were right up near the top. And I think giving you a tour of the fire station, you would see for yourself, even with some of the cosmetic cleaning that I described earlier that's taken place thus far.
Some of the items highlighted here on the board, I won't come back to the third station here in a second, but the refurbishments of Station 2 that we've talked about, we have had some improvements. Obviously, Station 1 we talked about already. ADA sidewalk repairs, some plumbing repairs, some flooring, the piers, the concrete piers, and an HVAC system all at Station 2 this past year. So we have done some improvements, but there's still some significant needs. I think especially in the bunk rooms, I think is a lot of what I heard that the guys just don't
The
feel.
actual living part of the fire station is the most challenged versus the bays or garage, if you will. And so that's where the bulk of the investment will need to be made. And you see approximate cost refurbished of about $2 million to bring Station 2 up to a livable standard for our firefighters versus what they are now.
There's some kitchen upgrades there. The Quint is listed on here again. A lot of times fleet is not part of a capital improvement plan. It's usually part of a fleet plan, but we highlight this just because of the cost involved, right? A Quint, one of the big trucks with the ladders, $1.7 million. We have applied for a federal grant. We're really excited and hopeful, knock on wood, for $1 million to help purchase that Quint. That is a replacement vehicle, and obviously it's a lot easier to find $700,000 than it is $1.7 million, and that's what we're trying to do with every project. The third station, now's a good time to mention, and Chief, jump in here, but one of the things that we have recently completed is a analysis. This information is going to be available to you as well from Matrix Consulting. Matrix Consulting Group recently did, within the last 4 or 5 years, do you know, all the best Southwest cities, Lancaster, Cedar Hill, DeSoto, and we were the last to do it. The city of Duncanville didn't have one, but we just completed it. And one of the findings, there's multiple findings in here, but one of the things that they really talk about is our response time to the western portion of the city of Duncanville, the southwest corner of the city of Duncanville. whether or not we are meeting the national standards. You want to touch on that?
Yes, the Matrix report is based on a national standard, what they reference is what we call National Fire Protection Association Standard 1710. So it's fire deployment standard, staffing, and response times is the general overall what that standard is involved. And so in this case, Matrix did analysis and our response times are extended to the west side of the city. Just as a reference point, kind of near basically the post office in that general area. Big Stone Gap and Cedar Ridge is what they kind of just drew that, not that exact location, but on the west side of the city. And so we've been looking at potential sites, and I've communicated with city managers for potential ones, just to kind of see where we're going here. But the response times per NFPA 1710 is on an EMS call. We have what we call turnout times. When we receive the dispatch from the communications center to get on the ambulance, and if it's assist the ambulance on the fire truck, you got 1 minute. If it is say a structured fire call, we have 1 minute and 20 seconds, extra 20 seconds to put our protective gear on that we wear and then get on the trucks and go. Full disclosure, we have some challenges with our turnout times, and we're working on that. Chief Chase, we have a challenge record management system that we think we're going to be able to make some improvements there. But that said, he's currently pulling data, but no argument there that we need to make improvements internally on that, and we are doing that. And we'll do it by station and shift, and peer pressure is a great motivator, and firefighters are very competitive. So that should work out well. But as far as the travel times, they're extended as well, because moving from Station 1 here on the on Main Street, then on Camp Wisdom where Station 1 is, especially when you go on the west side, we're not meeting those metrics that's in NFPA 1710 that I mentioned previously. And so with putting a fire station on that location, that should build out the city within 11 roughly square miles. And so we have been doing some due diligence there, and there was I don't even want to attempt to give some projected costs there because of construction costs, but just a kind of a roundabout number, and please don't hold me to that. With construction costs, we haven't got formal bids or anything, roughly about $8 million. What they describe as a satellite station, basically 2 to 3 bays, if you will, and the garage to store trucks. Basically you have an engine and an ambulance. And the Matrix report initially defines the ambulance to put over there as a peak time unit. Most of our calls are during the day, if you will. So basically about 6, 7 in the morning to about 6 or 7 that evening. And so that 12-hour period is the peak time usage. But what I've seen in my career, once you establish a peak time unit, and it's hard to staff because usually you're not hiring people, you're using overtime. And that gets old over a long period of time, but with our call volume keep on increasing, as I've mentioned earlier, I don't know if y'all realize, but Duncanville, they classify departments as urban department. We're densely populated, and with the various things going on in our community, we make a lot of structure fires. We're a suburban department, but we really function like an inner city department. As well, obviously, the EMS calls is the biggest part of our call volume. And so need those resources over there. We start off with a peak time medic unit, and then what we call an engine company, a pumper truck, if you will, not a Quint or a ladder truck, but an engine. And so that's what the units would be in there initially. So just trying to ascertain, typically like to put a reserve truck in that fire station in case that fire engine breaks down, they can go right into that reserve unit, because the service centers don't have a whole lot of space to store. You don't want to store this equipment outside. We already store some of our extra ambulances out in the parking lot. You'll see at both Station 1 and 2. So anyway, everything's about cost. The garage part of the station is the most the cheapest part of building, but nothing's cheap about building a fire station. But that's kind of an overview. Any questions or anything I overlooked? Yes, ma'am.
Do you only respond within the city of Duncanville, or?
No, and this is a good thing. I appreciate that question. Long before I got here, we have what we call automatic aid with what we call the Tri-Cities, DeSoto and Cedar Hill. And we're all dispatched at the same time. So whatever the closest units relative to those three cities, they respond. So it's not what we call mutual aid. We get on location, oh, we need help, and we call for mutual aid. They are dispatched from the get-go, just like if it was inside the city. And obviously we're going inside the city, but we respond into Cedar Hill and DeSoto as well on what I call, again, automatic aid. Yes, sir.
Do you know on the ambulance calls, is there a percentage of residents that you're serving versus maybe folks that are cutting through the city and they're in an accident and you're responding to their needs?
Most of them are the residents of the FAR. Certainly you've got traffic, certainly with I-20 and 67, but yeah, it's primarily the citizens, just the various issues in our community that necessitates a high call volume. Yes, sir.
So we have 8 agreements with the best Southwest cities. What about Dallas?
We used to have an agreement. What I understand, and I originally came from the Houston Fire Department. Dallas, especially on the south side of Dallas, is even busier than what we are, and we're a very busy system, as I mentioned earlier. And I'm gonna have Chief Chase correct me in case I misstate anything, because I want to make sure you get the facts. But it was not really a reciprocal agreement. We were going into Dallas much more, they were coming into Duncanville. And so with our limited resources, it wasn't the best thing for the city of Duncanville to be in that type of agreement with the city of Dallas. Did I misstate anything? That's right. So, yes, sir.
So if something happens in the multifamily development that is just east of Cedar Ridge, over there by I-20, if something happens there, then Dallas takes care of that.
That's their primary response area. Now, if they need assistance, they can contact us for mutual aid versus automatic aid that we used to have with the city of Dallas.
So we still participate with them in mutual aid.
If they have like a multiple fire, nothing's changed there. Yeah. So fire departments are real good about helping their neighbors. None of us are big enough to handle even the city of Dallas and certainly the city of Houston. We call for mutual aid too. And so we just don't go, we don't take those calls automatically. If the Dallas fire station that's normally covers that area is out, then with that automatic aid, because Duncanville fire station was closer, we would go versus another Dallas fire station. And so that's an extreme amount of call volume in that part of Dallas. And so it wasn't reciprocal in our best interest, especially only having 2 fire stations. And quite frankly, even with 3 fire stations, I wouldn't recommend going back to an automatic aid agreement with the city of Dallas. But we certainly provide mutual aid, and they provide mutual aid to us, plus with hazardous materials responses, technical rescue. And so we haven't burned any bridges. We get along very well with Dallas Fire. You got Station 12 right here by the Walmart. They're real close, and it's just it's a healthy relationship. But at that time, the thought was that it would be good for both Duncanville and Dallas. But over time, it proved it wasn't in the best interest of the city of Duncanville.
Yeah, I would agree, because when they get ready to go through their development process and put those buildings on the ground, I don't ever remember us getting consulted. Well, how y'all feel about us putting these 500 units right here? So those conversations don't happen. So it is good that we are not automatically tied in to them.
No.
Put it in larger perspective, in crisis mode, true crisis mode, when there was a structure fire at Wheatland and Clark Ridge, 7 cities responded to that.
I remember.
You know, so crisis is, you know.
They came on mutual aid. Automatic aid is a signed agreement. We have a document where Duncanville, DeSoto, and Cedar Hill signed that mutual aid. Mutual aid, they can request mutual aid from Galveston, and if they call us and we have resources to go, we go. That's just a call on the radio. Mutual aid, we don't have to accept. Automatic aid is a signed agreement. We do have to go.
One of the things you'll see when you start looking at some of these plans and these documents, we talk about the automatic mutual aid between Duncanville, Cedar Hill, and DeSoto. It actually even goes so far as to map out the various fire stations so we can see the response times and who is the closest and what that all looks like. So Cedar Hill has 4 fire stations. DeSoto has 3, but I think they're talking about a 4th, aren't they? So, and we have 2, right? So ours are essentially almost north and south of each other. The other thing that we have is, while Station 1, new Station 1 up on Camp Wisdom is on the west side of the railroad tracks, it's this southwest corner of the city, and you actually see it here in the heat map, where we've got the response time deficiency in the southwest corner on the west side of the train track. So that's again something that, you know, needs to be considered, even if DeSoto adds a station. I think they're doing that over closer to Lancaster, so that's not gonna.
Yeah, DeSoto's building a station presently, or getting ready to start.
Either that or
On
change
the
their
next one, quite
multi-
frankly, where Charleston Hospital is, our Station 2 on Main Street, we're first due, even though it's in the city of DeSoto. But it's a high call volume with nursing homes, the hospital,
Senior
and
citizens.
apartments, and so we're going over there quite a bit. Our firefighters would love to see, and Fire Chief DeSoto we promise the next station after the one we're building now will be over in that area. Because they realize it's a high call volume area. Hey, but it's a good collegial relationship, and it's good for the city of Duncanville, DeSoto, and Cedar Hill that we have automatic aid. When I came here, that's kudos, and we highly recommend keep that going forward.
One of the things we asked in that meeting that I was telling you about, I'll just go through this quickly, is which bucket should the 3rd fire station be placed in? This was before we started talking about the potential of doing a bond at 25, and it said medium term just because of the fiscal impact. I think there's been conversation about what bucket should it really go in. Does it make sense for it actually to go in part of the 2025 bond project if we do that? And I think that there definitely has some opinions have changed since October 29th of 2024, so we've started talking about that. Then additionally, in terms of the buckets, again, they'd like to see the improvements at Station 2 done. Honestly, improvements like that, and Richard, jump in here, correct me if I'm wrong, but generally speaking, we're not going to get as favorable bond consideration for renovations and improvements as if we were doing new buildings or separate projects, right? So it'd be better, honestly, for us to fund that through our own resources rather than adding that to part of the bond projects. I'll just quickly go through this. General Government City Hall, this was part of the facility needs assessment that was just recently completed. There's about $10.8 million in improvements that have been called out. What I would share with you is the number one thing that we ran into, and I remember, I think it was in either April or May of last year, I was sitting in the chief's office, and we were closer than the two of us are right now. I couldn't see him, he couldn't see me because there was no power in this building, and his office was pitch black, and our police department was operating pitch black. And so we really needed a generator. That's completed. Kudos to Public Works for pulling that off, getting us a generator, a big generator, industrial generator, powers all of City Hall and the police station now, and that is completely done. So that's done. We kind of talked about that, and this again was before that. A lot of these other improvements are things that are certainly things that we should talk about in a little bit more detail, but I'm going to quickly go through these because I think that there are some other options. Clayton is also here from IT. You know, there's certainly any number of different IT related items that we'll want to talk about as well. But let me keep moving here. The library, the facility needs assessment update or identify $3.8 million in improvements for the library. If you're not already aware, we recently outsourced the library to LS&S, Library System Services. LS&S is taking over. The city still owns the facility. The city is still responsible for the facility, maintenance, improvements. However, LS&S is a partner with us, and they are interested in supporting us in ways that make sense based on the community needs and looking at those different options on how we can do that more efficiently. So I'm just gonna go through that really quickly and jump over here to parks. Parks, Recreation Center, Senior Center, Parks Improvements, Trails, Lad Nature Preserve, and actually the plan has been adopted and completed since this. We have originally estimating 5 million, it's 9.9 million, so it's double what our original estimation was, but about $40 million of improvements. Any number of parks have been called out for improvements, obviously trails. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Rec Center, Senior Center, or any other parks or anything.
No, I think it's a pretty comprehensive list. It's kind of ever evolving.
One of the things we have talked about is an updated Parks Master Plan and maybe a Trails Master Plan, because it's been a while since the cities had the Trails Master Plan.
Yes, we are 8 years old, and we need a plan that is less than 10 in order to be eligible for a lot of the Texas Parks and Wildlife grants.
And I think that's one of the things that I tell you that staff is really working on diligently, is really truly looking for alternative sources of funding rather than just putting it in the budget. And if they don't, Richard is quick to remind them to do that. And so, looking for these grants and looking for different things and positioning us so that we could qualify for some of these grants improvements. So here's some of the results. The Recreation Center ended up in the medium-term bucket, and we're going to give you access to all of this information, so I'm really going to go quickly here. Senior Center in the long-term bucket. Harrington Park, we talked about phase 1, concession stand and restrooms, that's in progress. Phase 2 is the parking lot pavilion we talked about earlier. That showed up in the middle term bucket. Phase 3 is in progress now. That was a short-term item, and we figured out a funding solution for that to move forward with that trail. So I'm going to skip through this and jump over to the police department. Chief, I've been talking a lot, but why don't you take it away? We have had some accomplishments in 2024, new report writing, workout area, some of the HVAC improvements and fleet improvements, but you want to share kind of, and actually I'll think, sorry, I was looking to see if I had photos here, but I don't have all those photos, I apologize, but maybe you just kind of share some of what the
Challenges.
are.
So, Matt Starkner again, I've been with the police department going on 27 years, started in 98. The building, if I remember my years correctly, I believe it was voted on in 1985, and it was 1987, September, when the doors were open. So understand that these buildings, when they were built back then, are not meant to deal with the threats that we have today. You all are aware of. It's undersized. The Matrix Group's third-party group comes in. They say it's undersized for our current, plus even more so with our future growth. We've done some renovations, but you can't, there's no way to stretch out to get more square footage. So we have people officing in closets. You can't open her door because it hits her desk all the way. We've done everything that we can to maximize the space that we have. We had a very small report writing room. Well, we've done some things, and it's there with the report writing room. We no longer house our people that we arrest, the arrestees. We partner with the Tri-City Jail now in DeSoto. So our jail has been, I don't want to say renovated, but we've had to weld hasps on the doors because our evidence room has grown over capacity. Our evidence is in 6 different locations. We're about to do a 100% audit. We are going to have items that are missing. It's no one's fault because you have these things in so many different locations. The oversight of those locations is very hard and very difficult to maintain. So you'll see the workout facility here. So that's our Sally Port. Whenever we would arrest somebody, we'd open up the Sally Port doors, drive in, walk them into jail, book them in, and then you leave. Well, we transformed that into our workout facility, half of it. it was a great ego boost because now we have something nice in our police department. Our front facing area, who is sat in our lobby? I have a couple of you guys. It is not pleasant to be in there. You have 2 chairs, and if 3 people are in there, someone's standing up. We painted it, we've added photos, we've done everything that we can to make it pleasant. If we're interviewing somebody, even significant events, there's no soft interview room out there where you can take them to so that you can't hear what this person's saying or vice versa. The fleet improvements. I give Matt Bryant a tremendous amount of credit and Assistant Chief Tiarina. They worked side by side. We had some significant fleet issues where we had a lot of vehicles down where we had to reach out to another agency to borrow their cars because our cars were down. So they've done a great job. We have a great fleet now. We're still working on that. And then our HVAC and CID, that's much better. The big thing that I will tell you, and the city manager will account for this, if we have a large narcotics bust, mainly marijuana, everybody in City Hall knows because the ventilation is horrible.
All of a sudden, I'm craving Taco Bell.
Yes. Imagine being in the evidence room. I mean, it's unhealthy. So there is some significant issues that we're dealing with. We've been in this building, like I said, since I've been here, 1987. Not when I was here, but that's when they moved in. It wasn't big enough for when they moved in from the officers who did transition from the old police department to the new ones. So now we're looking at, obviously, with this matrix group, adding personnel. Well, I can't add personnel right now because I have nowhere to put them. So as we go through this, obviously the goal is to build for the future.
One of the things that picture doesn't show that you see up on the screen there, the workout room, they worked hard to really make that happen. On the other side of that picture, though, is where the motorcycles are,
Right.
some of the other things. So they're actually sharing their workout area with other uses,
Flammable
including
liquids that we have,
flammable
absolutely.
liquids,
There's-
generators, vehicles, and then it's actually all just open. So
It is.
if it's cold or hot or whatever, it's going to be
Right.
cold and hot in that area. And
Right.
so maybe just explain the workout piece and then what the requirement is for the officers, just so the group is aware of that in terms of the daily workout.
Yeah, so I can't remember when we implemented this, but the officers hasn't. They receive an hour during their shift to come off shift and use this workout equipment. Whether it's here or somewhere else, you have an hour. It can't be at the first hour or the last hour. Obviously, when you guys call us, it's in a desperate need for help. You don't want somebody coming that's unhealthy, that can't walk from the sidewalk to the front door without taking a break. So it's my job to provide them with the equipment to make sure that they are in shape. We just implemented a fitness incentive program, which is going to be great. There's certain key matrix that they have to meet. We're providing them everything that we can. We have this. I contracted with a company to where now you can order your prep food where it's delivered to the station at no charge. So we're doing everything that we can to provide them great things. They have to put it on themselves to do it.
Chief, maybe talk a little bit, just so the group is also aware, about some of the recruiting and the competition with the other cities and their facilities.
That's huge. So one of the things that I'm very passionate about all through my career is training. Finding what people are passionate about and sending them to them training and then giving them ownership in the police department on whatever that may be. I want to host training. Can you imagine, and a lot of you guys don't know what our police department looks like, but I can't host training right now because it would be a disadvantage to us because they'd be like, well, Duncanville was forever off my list. Training is huge. Recruiting is huge. When I tested, there was about 400 people test for, I think, 3 positions. Now we're lucky to get 40 or 50 people. We're still hiring people. We still have vacancies. but to recruit people, when I'm recruiting against other agencies who have a building that was built in '88, they're well advanced, more advanced than we are, because ours was built in '87. So you understand what I'm fighting against. And we have a very rigorous, very great recruiting team. We've increased that to how many we have now? 12?
Yes.
We just got a billboard. I mean, we're doing everything that we can to recruit people. Now it's to keep people here. Because when people start going to these trainings to other agencies, they see what they have and they can do the same job, probably work less, but be able to be in those facilities. So it's hard.
Chief is being modest. I'll share with you two things. The chief invited me and the assistant chiefs to meet with all of the officers last year when I was just starting. And I opened it up for questions. I was like, what do you want to ask me? What do you want to tell me? And on fleet, I think I heard there were something like only 2, 3, 4, whatever it was, but it was only a couple of vehicles where the air conditioning actually worked. And they spent the summer patrolling and serving the residents of the city of Duncanville with the windows rolled down with no air conditioning in that summer of 2023. Additionally, they've talked about this report writing room. I was hearing stories about how officers would actually come back in after their shift was done because they had to take turns in an area that was no bigger than about where Chase and Chief Keneally are sitting, and had to take turns squeezing in there to be able to write the reports and provide all the information. So at least we've got something a little bit better, but there are significant needs in the police department. And that has been, that's been reflected as we've been asking individuals where they think we should be, when we should be thinking about a police facility, and in every single thing we've done, it's been number 1 or number 2. It's been running right with the service center. That everybody has been feeling that it's something that needs to be addressed. We do want to also, at some point, maybe not tonight, but we do want to give you an opportunity to tour the police department too.
So I do have one thing that I'll add just real quick. And we have this really cool crime scene camera that is a 360 camera. I had one of our detectives today literally stake it everywhere in our police department. It's like you're touring a house. You can zoom in. So we're in the process of doing that and linking it to our floor plan. So maybe whenever we set something up, you guys have the ability, whenever you walk through, still have the ability to reference that whenever you're having a conversation in here or wherever you're at, to be able to zoom in and see exactly what you're working on. But that should be operational here in a week or so.
Any questions about police or the chief?
Maybe far afield, but in the case of the police station, let's say, for example, that everything went through in terms of what we're doing and what the council will do after what we do. So where would we put a new police station?
It's a great question. And we've worked on that. And I'll let Mr. Finch explain it, but let me give you an idea. Does anybody know how many districts, police districts, that we have in Duncanville? 4. And y'all know where they're intersecting at. So our police districts intersect, all 4 of them, here at Main and Wheatland. So northwest, north of Wheatland, west of Main, is northwest, or 111B. And then it just, if you think about it, 112, which is northeast, southeast is 113, and southwest is 114. So if you're looking at a location, perfect segue for you, sir.
Well, so we'll get into that probably a little bit later. But so realistically, one of the other big things that we're talking about internally as we evaluate all this stuff too is for the efficiency of operations and what makes the most sense. And to be honest, we've talked about different locations around the city, and we kept coming back to it makes the most sense for us from an operational perspective for police to be right here. And so we've actually worked on some concept plans about adding a building here on this property, right here, so we don't have to go anywhere else and buy any additional property or anything.
For either of you, what about the courts? Does that play a factor into the police department, or is that separate?
It does. Richard, you want to talk about courts? Perfect segue.
Yeah. So one of the things, so good evening again, by the way. So one of the things that has come up in conversations with the courts is a separate dedicated facility room, area courtroom for them, where right now, of course, they have the shared space with council chambers. One of the things that we've discussed in terms of the police station is the potential perhaps for multifunctionality, meaning that it would also house a courtroom for the community court staff and team as well. So it is one of the things that we've tried to do is how can we create, I guess, an avenue or opportunity for cross-functionality within the facility itself.
Essentially a public safety building. We would have police and court.
Yeah.
So you could take the judges, the courtroom, and the courtroom could then serve as a training room if there's training that needs to be done.
Lots of opportunities.
Yes.
Cross functionality.
Mr. Vince, would that include fire too, and something like that, or is it better to keep them separate?
Fire admin right now is down to Station 2, and we've kind of kicked some different things around, but to be determined, right, is what I would say, because there's also a lot of benefit for fire admin to be down at the home base with firefighters too, so. I don't want to keep you guys a long time tonight. So I'm going to just kind of jump through a couple of these things real quick. Public Works, I'm sorry. We've talked about the service center already. Some of the fuelings, we've touched on some of the streets. There's a lot more street stuff that we haven't talked about that are on these lists: utilities, alleys, drainage improvements, sidewalks, lead service line replacement. Just real quick on that. So we have applied for, we've just completed a lead service line replacement inventory. We've applied for a grant. We've been awarded, is it $9 million?
Yeah.
$9 million?
Yeah.
So we have $9 million to go towards that project. There's still a component of that that we would be responsible for. So I'll just kind of leave that there. But that's a federal mandate. We unfortunately don't have much choice in that. And then the final there is AMI, the automated. Do you just want to touch base on that real quick? So.
Yeah, sure. So we're also applying for a grant for advanced metering infrastructure, which is essentially so that we no longer have to manually read meters. Everything comes into the hub. It's far more accurate. There's constant concerns with water loss and all these various things, meter inaccuracies. I mean, the meters that we use today, they're mechanical. And so there's lots of points of failure for that. And that's any point of failure is lost revenue.
Director Bryant just did, Assistant Director Mohammed just did their report last night, City Council. So a year ago when that report was done, the city had lost about 10 million gallons of water. It's down to 7 million, but that's still way more than is acceptable. So that is lost.
For 1 quarter, 3 months.
Any questions on Public Works? Again, some of the priority type things here ranked pretty high. We'll come back to this. Water Master Plan we touched on. Again, it ranked very high as getting that underway. I wanted to share this with you. We kind of ask overall, and again, this was a combination of council members and staff and community members that were at the meeting. If we did a bond in 2025, what would you like to see in it? And the very first number 1 response was police building. Number 2 was a service center. Number 3, third fire station, parks improvements, Land Nature Preserve trail improvements, and the dog park. It came out in that order. But what I would say is we have given you a lot more, we've spent a lot more time tonight even talking about some of the other things than what we've really been able to get into. When we're in a council meeting, we're having to pull so many different ways. And so we drilled deeper tonight, even in kind of the status of where things are with the 2018 bond project, what's left. So as we move forward, yes, consider this information, but our goal is to give you more information for you to make a very informed decision, make a recommendation back to council, whether it's completion of the other projects, whether it's these or others as we go through this process. So, any questions?
Do
yes, sir.
we do you or the staff or the council as yet know at what dollar amount the bond could be possible without touching the tax rate?
So,
If taking a look at that and then thinking each one of those has a dollar tag to it, and then our job is gonna be to fit the tag to what we can and can't do, looking at the 1 through 7, do we know what that bucket looks like? Yes.
So Richard and I have done some analysis and also met with our security partner advisor. And essentially, the number that we keep kind of coming back to is about $25 million bond, give or take, which is about what it was. I think it was actually 22.
Yeah,
right?
21, 22.
Yeah. And in terms of your question, so I think it was about 4 or 5 cents, right, on the debt service is what it would equate to. But again, and we'll dig more into details on that, you will have in a few years the other one falling off. It's still a little ways out, but there would definitely be an overlap time period. And then what that looks like. We have some of that. There's some of that a little bit later in this presentation, but I don't want to take a lot more of your time tonight. I think nobody else has questions. One of the things I really wanted to talk to you about is meeting schedule, future meetings, when you want to meet, how you would like to go about that, what the preference of the group is, so that hopefully we can get a good cadence going and get you some of the information. I would anticipate we would be providing a lot of information to you in between meetings and links to information and reports and those types of things. So,
Personally, Wednesday is not a good day for me. I gave up where I'm supposed to be here tonight without any complaint.
thank you.
Because I do feel it's important to be here for this one.
Okay.
But some other nights besides Wednesday, and I know that the council's got every other Tuesday, and you've got, yeah, it's, there's boards and commissions, they're all involved in, I don't know how the rest of it feels, but some other night besides Wednesday, I'll try to figure out anything about.
Would everybody prefer in person or virtual or a mix? Like using Teams or something?
Well, you get my personal perspective into, like, I've got an emergency board meeting I gotta be at 9 o'clock. And it's gonna be hybrid. So it's a matter of how well we interact with each other personally, face to face, and how well each of us is able to operate and interact virtually. Some of us are good at it, some of us aren't. But in crisis mode, we can do hybrid with what would be in terms of normal activity with meetings. Should it be virtual or should it be in person? Something we're talking about, each of us impacting our own tax rate. Each of us are gonna be individually affected by what we do around this group. I prefer in person, because I think it's more interactive, it's more personal than virtual.
These are open meetings, correct? So I prefer in person. So if anyone in the community wants to hear what's going on following this process other than online, in person.
Well, I'll just say I'm on several different things, and for me, Thursday nights are better. I know that for some people, there are certain Thursday nights that aren't, so. But Thursday and Friday is honestly my only night, and I know nobody wants to do it on Friday.
I could rearrange Thursdays.
I have some difficulties with Thursdays, but that would be like the second Thursday of the month. I have difficulty with.
I have to, the first Thursday of the month, I have a
Are we
standing
meeting
meeting.
once a month? Is that what we're?
That was my next question. That's a great question.
Is that what we're saying?
With this timeline,
Yeah, that's only like 3 more
we have to be a
meetings.
whole lot more.
We're down to what, 2 Thursdays? I don't mind Thursday. And I can go either way, virtual or in person, doesn't matter.
Michael, any thoughts on
There, I mean, I'm pretty flexible. I can't do a Teams meeting though. My business is a Mac business, so
Oh, okay.
I can do like a Zoom.
Sure.
Oh, you want my participation?
We can do
Let's
Zoom.
ring a doorbell.
We
I
can
guess.
do Zoom. Do you have a preference?
I can do Thursday if it's once a month.
It's not gonna be once a month.
Yeah, that's
We're,
Or if we did one Thursday and then maybe a Monday, and not maybe every.
And it's probably not realistic to think that everybody's gonna be able to attend every meeting. We would like to encourage it for the purpose of just everybody staying on the same page and stuff. But we will record these meetings, so if you aren't able to attend one, you could always watch the video too to get caught up. But we would obviously love everybody to attend, so. So,
We can't do second Mondays, but Mondays are open.
Mondays are open.
I think EDC is the fourth Monday of the month.
So if we did something like the third Thursday of the month, if I made my notes correctly, and maybe the first Monday or something, how would that?
I wouldn't have a problem with it.
How about time? What works for everybody? Would you like to start earlier, later? Is this okay? 6:30 start time?
How long do we think each meeting will generally last?
Well, I can fill it if you tell me how long you're willing. So, I mean, I try to be respectful, right? I was shooting for 8 o'clock. It's 8:15, so trying to be respectful of your all's time and keep it, organized and moving forward. This was a little different tonight, obviously, getting introductory stuff.
I like the 6:30. It
I like
allows
6:30.
for the traffic if we're commuting in from someplace.
I can get my kid to bed.
So like 6:30 to 8.
6:30 would be great. I mean, any earlier, I'm gonna be in trouble.
Okay. We don't need to decide it tonight. The last thing I would ask you guys to think about is maybe, if you're interested and be prepared maybe at the next meeting, if somebody would be interested in being the chair or the vice chair, think about that. And the other thing I just wanted to ask, would you be interested in touring some of these facilities? I see a lot of shaking heads. Okay. To do that, would it be possible to do it on a different night other than one of our meetings or a weekend or something? Okay. I think probably what you're gonna wanna see, correct me if I'm wrong, you're gonna wanna see the police station, I think for sure. I think you're gonna wanna see the fire station, at least Station 2, maybe you wanna see the new Station 1 also. You're probably gonna wanna see the service center. You may wanna actually see the old fire station so that you can see parks and what's kind of happening in that right now. We can share that. Is there anything else anybody would like to see?
When are we gonna get our binders?
My goal is this week, by the end of the week, early next week at the latest. Put some of these plans and stuff together for you.
I'll read these reports, these matrix reports or whatever. And then at some point, are we gonna get into how something turned from 3 to 7 million, like what the flaw in the methodology was? Because I mean, that's gonna be important for me to look at this and go, he asked the questions, like, I don't know where that 6 million came from. I mean, we're gonna need a track.
I think that, Richard and I will do our best. We've gone through those analysis. I think that's why we've changed some of the internal flow processes, and that's also why we're trying to line this up. I'll share with you, Richard and I both come from, before coming to Duncanville, we were both in the Northeast, and we both have very similar experiences in doing bond projects, and we've done them differently than what Duncanville did in 2018. And our experience is where you actually don't bond out, borrow the money until you're ready to, once the project's actually done, instead of doing it up front. I think that's one of the things that was done is they took the money up front and it continued to lose value over time. Versus if we, for instance, if we fund the fire station and do it, whether it's a general obligation bond or Richard and I both have done bond anticipation notes in the past, you get that project completed and then you've already gone to the voters and gotten approval, but then you do the bond at the end. So you know for sure what the cost is gonna be and you do it that way so that you don't run into these gray areas.
So you separate interim financing from permanent financing?
Correct, yes.
Are general obligation bonds still available? I thought legislature was talking about doing it.
It's all been talk, that's my understanding. So they haven't actually done anything, so.
What's our current credit rating?
AA is standard force, right? AA?
Yes.
That's actually something else that we did this year. Richard spent a lot of time on, and we restored the bond rating, so.
Thank you.
Are we still using the same bond consultant or?
Hillcrest.
Hilltop.
Hilltop.
Hilltop. Hilltop. Jason Hughes is our contact with Hilltop, yes. Still the same group.
So just to be clear, we still have 13 years on the 2018 bond, is that correct?
Do you know off the top of your head? There's a time period, yes. We'll have to tell you exactly
Yeah,
what it is.
confirm it. I apologize. Don't have it off the top of my head.
We can also show you, we will show you at some point, what happens to that debt service is really tied to the assessed value, right, of the city. So as the assessed value goes up, the tax rate goes down. The same for bonds and debt service, the same for our property tax rate relative to operations of the city. So if we are building, for instance, I know one of the things in the comp plan survey that was just provided to us earlier this week is there was support, for instance, for townhomes. So if there were townhomes that were built and it helped to increase the overall taxable value, right, we're sharing the expenses of the city, and so then that should help to reduce the tax rate.
If I may add to the question regarding the change of the pricing, I think we can also provide some data related to specifically when you're talking about multiple of these projects are construction projects. So when it comes to construction industry, throughout the last 5 years, there was a huge, jump in supply chain prices related to concrete, to asphalt, related to fuel. We all know about the fuel inflation that happened during that time. Between the 2018 to now, and then that period had impacted the construction industry a lot because fuel had contributed into the supply, arriving to the different locations, and all of that had impact on those prices. And we have seen about a 50% increase in asphalt and in concrete at some point with the bids that came in that period of time. So that contributes to that. And also one of the things that I might also bring up in my experience with doing the latest bond program with the city of Dallas, we have accounted for inflation, and we have accounted for a rate of a percentage of 5% per year. So cumulatively, there was a 32% increase on estimates that was provided by engineers that was added in general to support, making sure that we can achieve, completing the bond program. And this is just an example to look at that was not part of what have been done in 2018, for example. There was not any accounting for inflation per year because it continued to happen. We actually had experienced in some years 12% of inflation. So that was like a big jump anyway, which was exceptional. But when you're looking at even looking at a steady, inflation rate, you're looking between 3% to 5%. And you need to account that for per year until those projects complete. So if you're talking about project that needs design, then construction, you're talking about, to consider at least 3 to 5 years of that percent inflation on top of the estimation that you get today from the engineers.
That was one of the big challenges that we've gone back, and Richard and I have looked at in terms of what they did before is immediately upon approval, right, pulling the money and then starting design, then starting engineering. That's just delaying it all that much further. So, I can assure you that we will get these done if in fact this, all moves forward and everything. There's different strategies. Mr. Harvey introduced us to Siegelville, and recently we looked at a design build project that they did for a police station, and that went much smoother and more efficiently. So there's different.
And the other thing is too, you can do once you decide to commit to bonds, then you can do like a reimbursement resolution. Just go on and spend the money up front, and then do your reimbursement resolution and pay that off.
Well, and to be quite honest, let's say, and again, we'll talk about financial strategies down the road, but let's say we're going to build a $10 million building, and the economy's doing great, and we have extra sales tax and everything else, and we haven't actually taken the bond out for that 10 million, but maybe we only need 6 million, right? And so we can do that by doing it that way to get that done, so.
It's just work to
Commercial
align.
loans, in commercial loans, there's an opportunity to pay interest only until it's actually your certificate of occupancy. Does that still exist with the bond?
Yeah, that's something like these bond anticipation notes where you pay a debt service, interest payment up front before you.
Is that different than the interim financing you were talking about, Mr. Harvey?
It's,
Can't
very
really
similar.
speak to that
It's very
because we have different experiences. Mine has been all government, so,
Yeah, mine's commercial,
yeah,
yeah.
Mr. Finch, can the city, if they have a surplus in their budget, can they accrue funds and put them into CDs or somehow to allow for some of this pre-design costs and construction work in progress?
Richard, you want to?
Yes. What we've tried to do, even with the bond funding previous, so from predecessors as well, is that we have that money in investments, primarily CDs or other short term, so we can easily get to it if need be, so that we can try to take advantage of getting some interest rate in our favor. Interest rates certainly in the past couple years, particularly on CDs, shorter term, were more favorable to the city. Over the past 6 to 9 months, those rates have continued to come down, particularly as the Fed has adjusted their rates. But it certainly is an option that we would definitely be looking into, or continuing to look into, to try to make sure that at least while the funding is idle, it's working for us.
This brings up the question to Mr. Fitchburg. Well, in terms of what do you expect from us? Of course, we're gonna determine what needs to be done and how much is gonna be allocated to it. And right around this table now, we're talking about how to finance it. I'm thinking maybe that's out of our wheelhouse. Let you guys worry about that. Our job is not gonna be to worry about how to finance things. Not worry about, but how big is the bond going to be, and turn it over to you, thinking about how to do that. Are you gonna want some input from us? I mean, do we put that as like priority 2B and 2C for us, or we don't even think about it? What's your expectation from us as a group?
So one of the charges from the council, right, is relative to the bond capacity of the city as well as what should be appropriated, right? So we don't necessarily need you to go out and figure out what the bond rate and all that stuff is. We'll take care of all that if there's going to be one, right? And we'll worry about all of the details. But I think it is good for you to have a general understanding as part of your recommendation on what the impact may be to the taxpayers. We'll get into some of those details.
Okay.
I think that's the biggest thing that I would encourage you to think about is what is the impact to the taxpayers, right? In terms of this, we can give you the numbers. If it's 20 million, 25 million, 30 million, or if it's 2 million, whatever it is, or no, right? We can run all those numbers for you.
I know the last time it was like, let's do as much as we can and impact the tax rate 0. That was the general feeling. Let's don't touch the tax rate, but as much as we can with sustainability. And that capped to 21.6 is like, we'll figure out what we can do for 21.6, but we'll never touch that tax rate. So, but you're talking, from what I'm hearing, depending on what we come up with, that tax rate could be affected.
I think it would be very difficult for you, given the financial constraints that the budget's already in. If you do a bond, it will impact the tax rate going.
I have just a different question. Is every district in Duncanville represented on this committee?
That is a great question. I believe the answer is yes, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look to see. Each of the council members, all 7 districts, appointed somebody, but I think your question is whether or not somebody lives in each of the 5 districts, right?
I just wondered if they could be represented.
I'm not District 4. I was suggested by Councilmember Cherry Brown. She's in District 4. I don't live in District 4.
So you don't know
don't know where two that are not here tonight, I don't know if they live in District 4, no, I'm just not sure, but, so. Okay, we don't wanna prolong this, any final questions, but we also, if you have questions, we wanna answer them this evening. So I think if we go with the schedule of the third Thursday, the next meeting would then be on March the 20th at 6:30 here in this room. In the meantime, we will be sending you out some information. I think Ms. Lewis, my executive liaison, had reached out to everybody to make sure that you have this information. I believe she has your contact information, but we'll make sure that we have that so that we can email back and forth with you and share information. And we'll also be getting some of that information together for you, the booklets and the webpage up.
Minor point brings up, the email that I received didn't show any other members. It was BCC.
Okay.
Is it possible to make a distribution list so we're all receiving,
Yes, we can take care of that. Yep, absolutely. Without doubt. Give you each other's contact information, so that, yep. So, okay, thank you so much, everybody, for spending the time with us tonight, so appreciate it. We have a lot of work to do, so